Dubey sir, now you can begin. Dubey sir, you can unmute and begin.
Yes. So good evening, friends. It's a pleasure to be back again this Sunday. I'm very happy to announce you that we have with us Dr. Gopal Kashmiri. Many of us who are aware of Krishnamurti foundations in India and abroad must have heard about Gopal, but for those who are not aware about him or they don't know about him, I'll introduce Gopal to you briefly. Dr. Gopal Kashmiri has spent most of his life since the age of 4 as a student and teacher at J. Krishnamurti schools in India, the United Kingdom, and the USA. He has been conducting teacher education programs internationally in Kashmiri and other schools. He was also principal focusing on curriculum and teacher education at the Krishnamurti Foundation School in UK, known as Krishnamurti Foundation Trust. Gopal holds a PhD degree in education, an MA in education and philosophy, and a BA honors in physics. So you can see he's a man of great scholarship. Gopal currently serves as director, MS Science, teacher licensor, and professor, core faculty, master's and doctoral programs, environmental studies and sustainability at Antioch University, USA. He explores transformative teacher education with regard to teaching and learning, curriculum design, and school culture as a whole. His school teaching repertoire has included mathematics, physics, philosophy, environmental studies, theatre, Indian classical music, and education studies. Gopal is named alongside Noam Chomsky, Sylvia Aston Warner, Eleanor Duckworth, and others in elaborating liberationist views of education. Page 20 of the book by Ayers and Ayers, 2011. Teaching the Taboo, Courage and Imagination in the Classroom. Second edition, New York. New York Teachers College Press, Columbia University. He suggests while our education policies, schools, and habits of teaching continue to be driven by political agendas and ideologies, today, despite the best efforts of our teachers, learning is critically endangered, its spirit tamed and tethered, its habitat shrunk, its resources depleted, and its movement circumscribed. This is Krishnamurti in Telegraph 2013. Gopal has a long-standing core interest in the questions and challenges that Krishnamurti raises regarding learning and living. I want to welcome Gopal once again and want to thank him for accepting our offer to be here today. And he's going to speak on an exploration of teaching and learning in the mirror of Krishnamurti's teachings. So Gopal lectures will be in 2 parts. He will speak for 20-25 minutes or for as long as he wants. And then there will be a brief question and answer session followed by some speaking again. I hope this is okay, Gopal.
Yes, so thank you very much.
And please unmute yourself and you can begin your talk now. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Dubeji, thank you very much for the introduction and thank you all for being here. Parekh sir is a teacher of mine from Rishi Valley days, so I'm happy to meet Parekh sir over Zoom after many years. I see some other faces also that I recognize. So thank you for being here, and I'm happy to share with all of you today some questions and observations that I would like to explore. So what I wanted to do is at the very outset, I wanted to clarify the approach today, and that is Krishnaji spoke of directly going to the source of the teaching and not having interpreters. So I think it's very clear for me that I am not actually speaking even of my own understanding or misunderstanding of Krishnamurti's teachings. I'd like to reframe the exploration in this way, as I'm going to share with you more a journey or an exploration of observations, questions, and about teaching and learning, and in the mirror of Krishnamurti's teachings. I will also share with you some short excerpts, and there is a danger when one shares excerpts of Krishnamurti's work or of anybody's work that it is taken out of context. Wherever possible, I'd like to also tell you where that excerpt or that quotation comes from, so that you can explore the context in which it comes from more fully. One more, while preparing for this, to be honest, I must say, as I was reading Dubeyji and others, it occurred to me that even one of these passages, as I started reading and preparing of Krishnamurti's, was warranted a whole lifetime of exploration. So these excerpts are very short, and I'd like to really draw attention to the larger context in which that talk or that writing might come. So please, if you wish to fully explore the context where the quote comes from, please take it up further, and I will try and provide the reference. One question that has repeatedly occurred or been asked by parents, colleagues, has been asked by myself too, has been asked in this way, in this manner, which is, how do you apply Krishnamurti's teachings to daily life? How do you apply Krishnamurti's teachings to school, to curriculum even, to the process of teaching and learning, to academics? So I would like to start by saying that this question, the way it has been posed, and I have posed it myself in this manner, is misleading. What it sometimes does is it suggests that Krishnamurti's teachings was the philosophy or the ideal up there, and we have to figure out how that gets applied to our daily life and what we do. And I'd like to suggest that it's not so much that it's an application of Krishnamurti's teachings. Krishnamurti's teachings were about the what is and about our daily lives, including what we do for so much time in school settings, for example, in classrooms, in teaching and learning situations. And so to interrogate and examine our daily lives, and Krishnamurti suggests and poses observations, questions, and challenges that illuminate and challenge our daily life and our conditioning in the manner in which we conduct ourselves every day. So I'd like to reframe that question. I wouldn't like to throw it out. Sometimes I think that gets ignored if we say that Krishnamurti's teachings was something not relevant to, say, curriculum, academics, teaching and learning, and all other aspects of our daily living. So I'd like to take up the question, but take it up in this different way as a journey. The other aspect is, I would really like to explore with you today and share a little bit about some of the observations, questions, and perhaps even confusions in my mind about some of the aspects of teaching and learning and our living every day. So it's not from the perspective of somebody who has had some understanding, but also a kind of active exploration of what I'm currently seeing and observing, and the questions I have, and even some of the doubts and confusions I might have. So in the conversation, I'm hoping that you will also clarify and challenge and review some of the things that I'm suggesting. It's only kind of sharing that that I'd like to undertake today. Okay, so those were just preambles. So just to start us off, this topic of teaching and learning whether in school settings or in home settings, I think it's such a core topic because this process of teaching and learning is happening almost all the time. And our deep-seated beliefs, assumptions, conditioning arise from this teaching and learning. Either we've gone to school or we've been educated by adults ourselves. When I say deep-seated, I like to refer to some writings about it. Not just the content, but the background conditioning that is very, very deep. Some people have even referred to this as the hidden curriculum. So I'll give some examples as we go along of, not so much examples, but some experiences or some stories, short anecdotes that will bring light to lived experience at home or in classrooms. So here is one, first of all, one quote from an anthropologist, and this is relevant mostly to school settings. And his name is Jules Henry, 1963, Random House. And he says, school is an institution for drilling children in cultural orientations. Educationists have attempted to free the school from drill, but have failed because they've gotten lost among a multitude of phantasms. Educators think that when they have made arithmetic or spelling into a game, made it unnecessary for children to sit up straight, define the relation between teacher and children as democratic, and introduced plants, fish, and hamsters into schoolrooms, they have settled the problem of drill. They are mistaken. Ivan Illich, who met Krishnamurti, says, the pupil is thereby schooled to confuse teaching with learning, grade advancement with education, a diploma with competence, and fluency with the ability to say something new. So I was going to share this more to evoke this sense of the deep-rootedness of conditioning and assumptions about teaching and learning that are almost there in the background if any of us have gone to school, regardless of whether we were teachers or not. And it seems that in this light, whether it's at home or at school, education has largely been a protracted form of conditioning and conformity. And that seems to be increasingly the case where learning is reduced to movement, short movements from point A to point B with a goal, assessed, measured, and then moving on to the next point. From the lesson plan to the curriculum, to going through the whole of school, going from one grade to another, to college, and then university, and then getting a job. This way of narrowing education to a training of jumping through hoops and exams, right, testing right from childhood, seems to be on the increase, tunneling the whole process of learning to a process of training. I'd like to share two short anecdotes. One is to do with, I've changed the names of the people. So one is to do with a girl, Lucy. And she was about 10. And in speaking with Lucy, she was drawing something. And I asked Lucy, I looked at the drawing, I said to Lucy, I have a few responses. One, to the drawing, I said, you're drawing a bear. Lucy, this bear that you're drawing, it seems so, this was my first response, it seems so lifelike, so realistic. I think you have a real talent in drawing. If you look at the lines of that you've drawn, it really brings out the shape of the bear and also a lifelike quality in the bear. That was my first response. The second response I had, and this is true, by the way, it's not a made up story, it's actually happened. The second response to Lucy was, Lucy, you know, I've seen the way you work when you do mathematics. And I think you have a real talent for mathematics. You're very quick at mathematics. But this drawing has taken you so long. And for your age, I think maybe you should pursue mathematics more. I think you have more of a talent in mathematics, not so much with drawing. Because the bear, it's just more like a cartoon, and you need to have some more details in representing this bear. And then I had a third response, and I will wait before I share the third response. For the first two responses, I asked Lucy what she felt. And for the first two responses, she said, for the first response, you said you really liked it and that I had a talent in drawing, and that I was good at drawing. And I felt, really, to be honest, I felt a bit afraid that the next time I show you something, you may not like it so much and you may not approve of it. And to the second one, she said, you told me that really my talent is in mathematics, I'm good at mathematics, not so much at drawing. She said, I felt disappointed that you didn't like my drawing, and that, you know, I'm not good at drawing. So I was sad and disappointed by this. And for the third response, this is what I asked her, and I will also just quickly draw for you what I had drawn. For the third response, I asked her, I said, Lucy, in your drawing of the bear, you've drawn something like this. And can you all see?
Yes.
So now I'm not sure if for a bear, this thing occurs like this. I really don't know. Or you can see, is it like this? It goes down for a while and then splits? Or does it split right at the beginning? Or does it go down all the way and split at the very end? And for the third response, she said to me, when I asked her this question, I said, what is your response? She said, I'm going to find out, because I also don't know. And so we very quickly started exploring this thing that I have later learned is apparently called a philtrum. If we touch what's under our noses, we might find this thing. It's called a philtrum, the small gap that's there, two ridges and a gap. And so very quickly we were exploring philtrums. does it happen? How does it occur for a bear? How does it occur for a dog? How does it occur for a cat? Is it different? Why is it different? What is its function anyway? And in the first two responses, I literally missed, and we literally missed what was under our very noses, to put it humorously. What it activated was a whole process of evaluation, judgment, approval, disapproval. And this, one doesn't have to be a teacher in a school setting to do that. Very quickly, a child does something and we approve or disapprove. We've watched in videos, friends of mine and researchers, that at the beginning, the child wants to share some aspect of the world that they're engaged with. And the adult very quickly, because of our own reflex and response, we come in with approval, disapproval, praise, or censure, criticism. Sabash, you've done very well, good job, even positive. And what happens is it takes us away from the world and exploring what is actually there to a whole set of conditionings that are based on fear and the adult's approval. So we've seen when children come early and show us something of what they have done, or even point to something in the world, when this approval gets activated by the adult, from that time on, it's almost like there is the birth of the self and the reinforcing of the self. The child then begins to look at the adult, at the teacher, to see if they will like it or not. They look to the test to see if their work is worth something, according to how many points we have given it, the assignment, the worksheet. So in very simple and subtle ways, the whole process of conformity and conditioning gets reinforced from childhood. And we have inherited that in our own learning as well. I'll share with you one more example, perhaps a humorous one. So this is a friend of mine shared that this happened with his daughter, Deepa, again, using a different name. Deepa said she was drawing something, and Deepa said that he asked her, what is it you're doing? She said, I'm drawing a flower. So my friend says, how come you're doing this flower? What is it that interests you about it? She said, well, I looked at Kumar, and Kumar was also drawing a flower. And you know, Papa, when I grow up, I want to marry Kumar. That's why I want to do things as Kumar is doing. And what happened was the same instance, just a few months later, even in kindergarten, he observed this change in his daughter. After just a few months of school, he calls this the shield maneuver. And the shield maneuver meaning that what Deepa started doing was covering her work. So she has a work like this, covering it so that nobody can copy from her. And he said, what is it that you're doing? He said, well, I am coloring my flowers violet. And I want to make sure that Kumar and other people don't also color it violet, as though there is a shortage of the color violet, because my work needs to be protected and not shared with others, because I might get evaluated, praised, and I will get ahead. This is just a few months even of kindergarten, in even a progressive setting. So it's not just to do with the flower or the bear or the content, but in a very simple, basic level, the whole process of approval, disapproval, evaluation, measurement begins to occur. And learning becomes chunked in these small frames, going from learning how to draw a bear, learning how to do fractions, learning addition. And at the end of each activity, going from point A to point B with a goal in mind, comes measurement and evaluation. Nowadays, with the very young children, this process is being activated, that they have to do well, they have to be evaluated at every process of their learning, almost like you'll now have a curriculum for walking, a curriculum for talking, and people get worried, my child doesn't speak at this age. So this process of training and conformity seems to happen very subtly and very quickly and very early in our approach to teaching and learning itself. So Illich and Jules Henry's point about training the mind and also about the hidden curriculum is deeply reflected from childhood. And this can happen in the home setting as well. So I wanted to share those two short anecdotes to bring out the power of the teaching learning process in conditioning, in tying learning down to measurement, measurable goals and outcomes. Here is one extract that I wanted to also share with you, which is, I'd like to explore today also not only the realm of personal human relationship, but also learning with regard to the world within and the world outside, the whole of learning. And that also includes academics. I think we've sometimes put aside academics, say mathematics or drawing or painting, and said, let's look at learning in terms of our relationship, fear, competition. I'd like to explore this in conjunction with the subject matter. And in this respect, I had selected two extracts from Krishnamurti, which are relevant to that. And he raises challenges and questions relevant to that. And this is from On Education. Now let us find out, this is Krishnamurti. Now let us find out what is the real meaning and intention of education. Can your mind, which has been conditioned by society, the culture in which you've lived, be transformed through education so that you will never under any circumstances enter the stream of society? Is it possible to educate you differently? Educate in the real sense of that word, not to transmit from the teachers to the students some information about mathematics or history or geography, but in the very instruction of these subjects to bring about a change in your mind, which means that you have to be extraordinarily critical. You have to learn never to accept anything which you yourself do not see clearly, never to repeat what another has said. And that's from On Education. Here's another excerpt that I'd like to share and draw our attention to. And it's from A Flame of Learning and their talks with teachers at Brockwood in England. And it's quite a remarkable book. If some of you haven't come across it, I would recommend it in the full. Krishnamurti even does a role play in that. It's quite unusual in that he plays the role of a young new teacher coming into the school, and he asks, requests and demands of the teachers to teach him. So he draws them out in playing this role of, I'm the new teacher, you're the old teachers, teach me. And he repeatedly asks questions, drawing out from them the intentions of education and teaching and learning. So Krishnamurti says, I don't quite know how to begin this. There are several schools which the intentions of these schools is to impart these teachings, Krishnamurti's teachings, which some of you have heard or read, to the students through their academic subjects. We're trying to bring about a feeling which doesn't exist anywhere else in the world, that we're all working together for the same thing. We're going to see if it is possible to find out how to transmit or translate these teachings to the students through their subjects. Yes, to teach the ordinary subjects is essential for various reasons, which we don't have to go into, but can we, through the subjects, which every student has to go through, convey these teachings to them? And there's a further discussion of what it means and whether we do have to teach these essential subjects and so on. But this aspect of not to leave out our exploration of the world and to proceed to teach and learn in ways that are deeply conditioned by our assumptions and beliefs about teaching, learning, academics, school, even home settings, about children. I'd like to bring out this aspect of to include in our exploration all aspects of learning. So it's not just confined to some other worldly aspect of here we go ahead with our knowledge and teaching and learning with regard to mathematics and English and Marathi or Hindi or whatever language. And there is the rest of life, which is to do with relationships and conflict and competition. I'd like to open it up to exploring the whole of living and the whole of learning, whole movement of learning in all our daily life settings. So in connection with this, I'd like to share with you, how are we doing for time? Is this yeah, Parekh sir.
Parikh bhai, Harshad bhai, you want to say something?
No, let him finish first.
Okay.
Gopal.
So it's 37, okay. So I'll just share these few points, and then I want to also bring to light or draw to your attention, to our attention, some excerpts, and that is to do with academic excellence, for example. One, I think frequently in the realm of knowledge and academics, I have, and colleagues and students before, have assumed that when we speak of academic excellence or knowledge, we understand what it is. And we say, okay, knowledge has its place, academics has its place, academic excellence, and the teaching and schools and what we're exploring is much more than all of this. And so we push from a kind of knowledge or understanding or conclusion about these aspects of knowledge having its right place, academic excellence is something we know about, to a notion of what is excellence in the whole of life. And this assumption or way of thinking that I have found amongst colleagues, friends, myself included, I think it frames it in a way that is misleading. And I wanted to just share with you briefly some quotes, some very short quotes, references from Krishnamurti. One is excellence, and then the other one is on measurement of learning. Academic excellence is absolutely necessary, but a school is concerned with much more than that. Kay speaks to this. And it might seem that we have to then just extend this sense of excellence to other aspects of life. And I think Krishnamurti challenges this. Is it possible, this is Krishnamurti, is it possible to eliminate altogether the comparative evaluation, academically or ethically? Is it possible to help the student not to think competitively in the academic field and yet to have excellence in his studies, his action, and his daily life? Competition exists only when there is comparison. and comparison does not bring about excellence. Another reference. So we are demanding of ourselves the highest form of excellence, and that excellence can only come into being when there is compassion, clarity. And from this compassion and clarity comes skill, not the other way around. And that is what we are trying to do, to develop a skill and have clarity and then compassion. We are saying quite the contrary. And then one more on excellence. So can discontent never be smothered? Never. Though you may have children, wife, never that flame wither away, die, become ashes. That's one problem. Whether it is possible to keep the discontent at its highest excellence. These are from Letters to the Schools and Sun in 1977. And now about exams and grades and measurement. That is, this is at Rishi Valley, Krishnamurti says, that is, what will the others think of you if you fail your exam? I hope you will all fail. And that was in 1985 at Rishi Valley. Another reference. If I fail in my exam, and I hope you all will, and you think of the future, what your parents say, what your teachers say. And another reference, I failed in all examinations. They sent me all over the world for exams. All of them I failed. Thank God. Think differently. I have milked cows, looked after chickens. And another one, you watch yourself in a class when the teacher compares you, gives you different marks, different grades. You're destroyed. Your own capacities, your own innate being gets suppressed. The difficulty is that the parents are not interested in all these. They want you to pass an examination to get a job, and that is all their interest. So what do? At home, they compare you with your elder brother or nephew or niece and say, be as clever as that. And this is from Rajghat, 1954, what I just shared with you. And here's another one, January 7th. This was January 6th. And there's another one from January 7th, 1954 at Rajghat School. We were discussing yesterday with some of the teachers whether it is possible not to have examinations at all, but to watch over you every day, month after month, to see that you are learning naturally and happily and easily, to find out what you are interested in and to encourage that interest so that when you leave the school, you go out with a great deal of intelligence, not just merely with the capacity to pass an examination. So I'll just stop here after these two, sharing these two sets of excerpts about excellence and evaluation and examination and testing. And why I wanted to share it was also its relevance to the two anecdotes I shared before about this constant process of learning reduced as a journey of going from point A to point B as a goal. And at every step being evaluated from childhood, tying shoelaces. Children are being evaluated to see if they have motor skills at the appropriate age. Young children are being evaluated for reading and writing by seeing if they can bubble computer marked assignments. So from childhood, this process of reducing learning as a journey from point A to point B with no leisure, going as quickly as possible and getting evaluated seems to be on the increase, both from at home and at school. And one word that I just bring in very quickly is the word assessment. The word assessment originally apparently had the root ad sedere, which means to sit with. Assessment didn't mean I was going to look at your work, or you were going to look at my work and tell me what it's worth, but more to sit with something together and explore it together. So I'll just say, so those few things for now, and then let's open it up for a bit of discussion. Yeah, thank you. I think it's exceeded the time. It's well over the time, but we cannot have a second segment. We can just plunge into a discussion. However it goes, let's just share and explore together.
Thank you, Gopal. I think you're very well opened up very important issues in education, teaching, learning, evaluation, assessment, and so on. So I think we can open it up for discussion. Harshad bhai, you wanted to say something? You want to start?
Yes.
Okay.
Are you able to hear?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Gopal. When you were describing about the painting done by a child, it reminded me of Rishi Valley when once I went to the arts and crafts department, and a little boy, he was painting something, and he had painted a house and the grass and trees around. And then I asked this boy, where are people? So this boy said, the people are inside the house. So I said, bring them out. He said, no, it is raining, and it started painting raining. So I thought this boy was really very intelligent. And so there, I find that students are very good in Rishi Valley, and they were asking very beautiful questions. Even to Krishnamurti, they were not afraid of coming on the stage and listening to Krishnamurti. Now, when I worked as a teacher in Rishi Valley, and I was teaching physics and mathematics, and when I asked this question to the whole class, there are the bright students, they answer very quickly. And then I could see that students who were not very slow, very weak, they used to give up because they were comparing in their mind with this bright student who were giving answers very quickly. So comparison exists among students even when a teacher is not comparing. And I feel that comparison will always exist, whether you like it or not. People will compare you with other people. So the real learning is how do we take when somebody is comparing me with somebody very bright, do I feel hurt, or I feel that yes, there are intelligent people in this world and there are not very intelligent people. So the real question is that maybe comparison cannot be avoided, but is it possible to not get affected by either praise or criticism? And that is what I feel Krishnaji was talking about, learning about what is happening within us by direct looking within. And in Rishi Valley, I feel that yes, the environment is very, very beautiful. There is a lot of space, silence, nature. But I feel that students are very busy with learning too many things, too many subjects, too many activities. And they do have some time, if they are interested, to sit quietly during what they call sunset, astachal, and look within. And those who are very sensitive, for them, Rishi Valley environment is very, very helpful. So nature is also a very, very important part, and the teacher can take students outside and they can observe nature, and that is a direct way of learning. And this happens very often in Rishi Valley. So, okay, I have finished. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Harshad bhai. Yes, Dinesh Waghmare. Please unmute yourself.
Can you hear me, sir?
Yes.
Are you able to listen to me?
Yeah.
Sir, you yourself said that, and Krishnamurti also agrees with this, that career excellence or academic excellence is a must. So in a way, this technical competence or technical, you have to give conditioning. If you call it conditioning, you may call it conditioning. Similarly, as Harshad sir said, the comparison, evolution at the will also be there. So can we, can we not teach him how to address the psychological aspects of the personality at the initial age only itself? And also at the same time, as you said rightly, in your those two examples, the child's creativity doesn't takes a backseat. So how these three, if you call it aim or goal, whatever it is, but can we not give them the training of this also? Because anyway, to some level of conditioning you have to give, isn't it? What do you have to say, sir?
And I think there's Hareshwar ji as well. And then I think those questions are related, Prasad ji and Parekh sir. It's so let's take it up together. And did you have? There's one more question, Hareshwar ji. Did you want to?
I think we'll hear Prasad sir, and then we'll go to Haresh. Yeah.
Sir, I have never been a teacher, and I do not also have science background. But I really appreciated the Gopalji's remarks that the comparisons we give to children, they create the self in them from the very early childhood. That is very true. But at the same time, I wonder how you science teachers can create Krishnaji's values through the teaching of science subjects. I can understand you taking children to, to some beautiful spot and try to give them an appreciation of nature or appreciation of love of people and things like that. But they're all outside the direct teaching of the science subject, like maths or physics. How do you create love of people in a child through mathematics or through physics or through chemistry? How these, teaching of these subjects itself creates those values? That is the question that has been troubling me, sir. You can explain.
Gopal, you want to hear others before you answer them? Yeah.
Okay, maybe I'll take it up now. Is that okay? I'll take it up now, and then we can see how the other questions take us.
I think it's a good idea to do that. Yeah.
So I think what I would like to draw attention, because this is the way in which I have functioned as a teacher for several years, is not being mindful or not being aware of how quickly this comparison process and how subtly it creeps in. In my response to the student, for example, when I said, oh, you're a good artist, and the other case when I said you're a good mathematician, but not an artist, what went unexamined or what I wasn't aware of was how quickly that comparison had come from me as an adult. And I took it, I can take my observation of the child's work, whether it is in mathematics or art, as a true statement about the child's work, but it is really a true statement about comparison in my mind. And comparison doesn't have to be just comparing the child's work to another child's work, but it's comparison of the child with regard to where I thought the child should be, what the child should be doing, what kind of understanding the child should have reached. So I'll illustrate this by something, again, quite simple. If I look, Dubeji, can you tell me please the time?
It'll go on till 8:30 at least, so you can you have enough time. Yeah.
And the time now is?
It's 7:25, so we have 35 minutes. Yeah.
Okay. Now, in this kind of normal interaction that we have, human interaction, which I had with Dubeji, I asked Dubeji the time. And why I asked Dubeji the time was because I didn't know the time. Now, in this setting of teaching and learning, when this whole mindset of teaching somebody gets activated, what seems to happen is we ask questions, the teacher or the adult, to which we already know the answer. And explicitly or implicitly, we evaluate. Imagine if I had said to Dubeji, I didn't say now I said thank you because I didn't know the time. But if I had said to Dubeji, well done, you can tell the time, that has no meaning. But in daily life situations, when we try to teach somebody, it seems this kind of known information questions keep getting asked all the time. What is 7 plus 7? And you can extend it to the most complicated question. The teacher already knows the answer and is asking students question to guide them from point A to point B. And it's quickly followed by evaluation. And so the teacher either says, well done, and moves on to the next student, or asks a new question till they get the answer that they're expecting. And this happens across the board for several subjects. It can happen with mathematics. It can happen. So I'm, Prasad, sir, I'm trying to address that question. So is it possible, and also previously the question of creativity, in the teaching of these very subjects, can it be possible, can the teacher, the educator, be also involved in the process of learning and understanding, so that they're not posing questions to which they already have the answer, which are really fake questions. They're not real questions. So that is one aspect. And to give you very briefly, a short example of this is I've paid close attention to a class where students are learning, for example, odd and even numbers. And this I think is relevant to Krishnamurti schools, not Krishnamurti schools, any kind of setting, because it's a kind of basic human conditioning. And in this class, they're exploring odd and even numbers. And I see on the video, the child is asked, and they have a nursery rhyme. So to get children to say, okay, 1, 3, 5, 7 is odd, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 is even. So the teacher is doing this, and the teacher asks, and all the hands, of course, go to show what we already know. Mostly in classrooms, when we put up our hands in a classroom situation, it is to contribute what we know. Rarely do you see in a situation somebody saying, look, I put up my hand because I'm really confused about this, or I don't know. Usually the hand goes up to say, this is what I know. So anyway, so in this situation, they're discussing odd and even numbers. And the child says, everybody, 6, the teacher asks, so 6 is what? 6 is, all the children say even. And this one child says odd. So the teacher then can proceed to other children or correct this child's understanding without actually examining and exploring how this child is thinking about it. And in this case, what happens in the video I'm sharing with you, I've seen, and it's a public school teacher. The teacher actually asks, so how did you say odd? And the child says, well, you can have 3 pairs. You have 3 sets, 3 groups of 2. So it's odd because it has 3. The teacher says, well, you shouldn't count the number of groups. You only count the individuals in the group. So the child says, and then the teacher asks, 6 is, all the children say 6 is even. And some of the children are about to say odd, but they look at the teacher's expression. They look at each other's expression. Amit is supposed to be good at mathematics. So one child starts to say odd and says, oh, even. So all the child give the teacher the desirable answer, the expected answer. This one child still says it's odd. So the teacher says, well, how did you figure that out? You're still saying it's odd. And the child says, you told me I can't count the groups. So I can't count 3 groups of 2. But in my mind, I'm counting only, suppose I make 2 groups of 3. Now it's looking very much odd. I have 2 groups of 3 and I'm counting only the members in the group. So it's not that the child deliberately had a wrong answer, but because the teacher, as educators, we have this reflex of guiding students to a destination, we barely have the time to explore their own understanding and their own creativity, to use a person. And it's not that this child is a genius. What I found, the more closely I looked, it wasn't that there were bright kids and stupid kids. It was more that I was stupid in the sense of I was conditioned and blinded by my quick reflex to get the student to a particular destination and measure the student's learning. So this deep hidden reflex that allows me to say this kid who said 6 is odd is really not mathematically skilled. Or when this child draws the bear, this child isn't an artist, has very little to do with the child. It has a deep assumption and evaluation in my very looking at what the child is doing and learning. So I just wanted to bring that up and raise the question, if we didn't evaluate constantly and measure our own learning and that of a child, what is our engagement? Like Parekh sir drew out from the student about the drawing and people outside and the rain. What does it mean for our learning in mathematics, in art, in poetry, in philosophy, in language, in history, if this deep background conditioning isn't always in operation? And when I bring the child as an example, it's really to make vivid in simple ways, illustrate this. But I think we can talk of teaching and learning as occurring within ourselves. It doesn't have to be with a child. In the sense when we are learning something, how quickly this process of evaluation and destination comes in to the learning process itself. So I just wanted to raise that as something to explore. So is it possible or is it inevitable that it must go on all the time, that we guide people from one knowledge, one bit of destination to another and measure it? Or is it possible to be free from this whole measurement of learning so that learning has some room to breathe, if you will? So I'd just like to raise that question. Yeah.
Thank you. Harishji, you want to say something? Yes, unmute yourself, please.
Okay. First of all, I'm very happy to see Gopal after such a long time, after our last meeting at Sahyadri. Yes. Okay. Let me start with my own experience of, I remember it was in 80s when I translated the first part of Letters to the School into Hindi. I understand the 2 parts have been now, appended, compressed into one, if I'm not wrong. But I happen to translate only the first part. Let me start with one thing, Gopal, since you used 2 words in the same breath, knowledge and academic excellence. They need not be equated. You might not have meant exactly that, but the wrong message may go. And I will give only 2 examples without beating about the bush. Einstein had to leave Munich school for only one reason, that he was constantly failing, because you are supposed to pass not only mathematics and sciences, but also history. And he told the teacher, I am not interested in which war happened in which year, what kind of agreement, and treaty happened. He said, after all, why do human beings fight? let us take our own example. We all know Ramanujam. I understand there is some Ramanujam number. I am a humanities man, so I don't know the exact thing. But we all know, and we all should know one very, very interesting thing. Before Ramanujam plunged into his doctoral work at Cambridge, he went from India, and in case some of my friends don't know, he hadn't passed a single examination in India for only one reason. He was not even a high school graduate, for only one reason. Because he needed to pass the Tamil exam, literature or whatever it is, history and all that. And he would always fail quite a few subjects. The only subject he passed was mathematics and so on. But luckily, fortunately, his genius was recognized by Cambridge and he went there. So in my own experience, during my own journey, unfortunately, I am teaching in a very conventional school in Hyderabad. I am having to teach for my, to pay for my bills and all that. I have seen, I try to help my children to develop a perspective rather than knowledge. Particularly, after the advent of the internet, now all the knowledge is on the cloud or whatever it is called, internet and all that. How you apply that knowledge. So that is why, computer and all that is the direct result of applied mathematics, whether one calls it computational mathematics or whatever. Okay, and applied sciences, applied physics and all that. So it applies to everything. If I may be forgiven for this phrase, applied spirituality. One can read and memorize all the Vedas and Upanishads and may not put a single thing into one's life because, so it is all theoretical. That is one thing. Second thing, as I mentioned latest to the schools, Krishnamurti emphasized two things very, very, I would not say passionately, rather vehemently. One thing is flowering of goodness. Well, I cannot blame Gopal that he did not touch upon it because an hour and a half has its own limitation. But two things, in that book he emphasizes. He emphasizes what does he expect from the teacher. So, you see, all this comparison and all that, please, as others also have said, Dr. Harshad Parekh also has said, let us not be too obsessed with, denouncing comparison and things like that. Because we can't wish away all this competition. Once you go out of the school, then you have to have a competition, whatever field you enter, even humanities, to get into because Indian certificates and all that, they don't have much value. So you have to, and competition is there. So a teacher's, it is sublime duty of a teacher to make his student or her student aware of this reality. But at the same time, caution them against the dangers of conformity, which is in simple language. If you conform to social norms or whatever it is, even if you conform to Krishnamurti's philosophy or teachings, you are a second-hand human being. So one has to find out for oneself. That is one thing. But out there in the world, competition is there. If you don't compete, this is the result. If you compete, this is the result. You may have Lamborghini and yet you may not be a happy human being. You understand? So there is no doubt about one thing, that the Christian teachings have so many dimensions, and we have to be wide, have a broader perspective. Thank you, Gopal, and thank you, everyone.
Yeah, there are two questions. I think in the interest of time, we, including myself, if we can all be brief, I see two questions from what Hareshwar ji raised, and I would like to address it. One is the place of knowledge in learning. So I think there's one question there about the place of knowledge in learning. And then the other one is what I raised initially, and I want to raise it. Is this comparison inevitable and this constant measurement inevitable? Or is it possible for learning rather than the measurement of learning to be at the center of our exploration and living. So I'll just raise it briefly in those terms. But please, other people, please also share.
Yes. We have Mr. Prabhakar. He wants to say something. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Sir, I have a question from my student. So I wanted to get answer from all the other educationalists along with us. So recently I conducted a workshop for 15 days. A child was, very curious to ask this question to me because he could not ask in the regular classroom. The question was that, sir, in our class, there are 30, 35 students, and some of them, they get 18 marks, 90 marks, or 95, some get 35, 40. And when we take our assessment paper to home, that is examination paper, written examination paper to home, my father, every time he tries to find out where has they gone these rest of the marks, because I most of the time get 40, where has gone the 60 marks, and he will be searching, and he could not find where the marks have gone. So in the same way, those who get 80%, 20 marks have gone. Those who have got 90%, 10 marks have gone. And I am really confused. Where will these marks go? Will these marks go back to the teacher who taught us? And when they go back, does it become minus marks? Because I get plus 40. So if it goes back, does it become minus 60? So is the teacher getting minus 60 marks? That was the question. And I'm really confused. What answer should I give to my student?
Gopal, you want to answer, or you want to hear other people first?
Let's hear other people. I've been talking a lot, but I've registered the question, and thank you so much. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, Shakti ji, please go ahead. Shakti ji, unmute yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. Sir, you read an excerpt about discontent in this Krishnamurti's excerpts. And so far as I understand theoretically, he gives a very specific meaning to the word discontent. What do you think its connection with not only with the world of education, but in the world of self-education also? I just wanted to you to say a bit about it. Thank you, sir.
Yes, Harshad bhai, go ahead, and then Gopal can answer all. Yeah.
Okay. Yes. About academic excellence, you see the parents, they spend a lot of money on the education of their children, and they want their children to do very well in the examination. And it is like an investment for the parent, so that their children, they can earn much more money in future. So academic excellence is necessary. Otherwise, parents will not send their children. And but apart from academic excellence, there is much more in Rishi Valley about living together in nature with a good relationship with teachers and students, and some philosophy and music and dance and overall development of the human mind and the heart. So, but academic excellence is necessary, because without that, parents will not send their children. And about when you teach a subject like physics, there is a lot one can talk about matter and energy, and it leads deeper questions about what is matter. Is there something which is not matter? Is ghost a matter, or a thinking is a matter? Is God a matter? So one can discuss with students about something which is not matter, and also energy, that there are many different kinds of energy which students learn in the classroom. But is there an energy within the body? And we can ask the question, why do we get tired at the end of the day? Because some energy is getting lost in conflict with people. So we can discuss about how we lose energy while living our life, daily life, in the form of conflict or some problems of relationship. So there a lot of scope is possible about talking about quantum physics and metaphysics, how they are very much related, and so on. About the marks, yes, even in Rishi Valley, teachers are giving marks for every test and examination. And the students are very much interested in knowing who got the highest and who got the lowest mark, so that they can compare where they are. And even when the parents come, they want to know where the student stands in comparison with other students. So I feel that the comparison cannot be avoided, no matter how much we try, but we can discuss about the effects of comparison on our mind, how it makes us either very proud or kind of a superiority or inferiority, and how that affects our life. So, okay, I've finished. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to take up these questions, and if I may, as I'm sharing with friends, I would like to speak somewhat passionately about it, as I do feel I'm with friends who are exploring and investigating together. And my response goes to the earlier question. Is it that we say, well, it's inevitable, we have to do some of this given the constraints and so on. Then after having compared the student, after having measured their learning, after having from a position of authority given it value, are we saying it's inevitable to do that? And then we will teach them about the effects of comparison and not to identify. So for example, to make that a strong response, if I said to one of you, or if you said to me, if I said in terms of your contribution today, or my contribution today, if you were to evaluate what I have said, or I were to evaluate what you've said, and say of some of you, you get 100% marks for what you've just said. And some of you, I'm sorry, it's just meaningless what you've said. It's only 40% marks. And then I go into the nature of self and identification and comparison, saying, please don't identify with the kind of judgment I've inflicted on you. I think that for me, that is an avoidance of our responsibility and role in this whole process. So to say that I'm in a school, I have to inevitably do it, then I will have to be clear. So to address Prabhakar sir's question, can I be clear that this measurement and evaluation in the exam is not a statement about the student's learning at all. It is the statement of the criteria that the adults, the syllabus, the curriculum, the government, the state has brought to judging whether something is valuable or not valuable. That 20% or 40% was lost because it was not there in the student's hands in the first place. It was there in the hands of the authority of the curriculum or the syllabus to decide that this response values this much more. The person who said 6 is even gets the mark. The person who said 6 is odd, although they're thinking beautifully and mathematically, that is not worth 5 marks. So my response is this inevitable that we need to respond to learning in a way that constantly brings up measurement and evaluation and judgment? And not only with the student, but with regard to ourselves. If we were to draw something or write something, how quickly that process of measuring what we, oh, I'm not good at this, I'm good at this, this has come out beautifully, that process gets activated. So I'd like to raise the question, is it inevitable that learning has to be constantly measured, or is it possible for, as I put it before, for learning to have room to breathe, for learning not to be constantly, because this is happening. People are from the youngest age, children are being measured, evaluated, tested. How quickly can the child tie their shoelaces at this age? That's a reflection of motor skills, apparently. And this process goes on. I just want to say one more thing, is the taken for granted aspect of academic excellence. And some of those extracts that I read from Krishnamurti, it seems Krishnamurti is challenging us not to start with, oh, this is excellence. We know academic excellence is this, and it's often defined by how well students do in tests. But there is the rest of life, the breadth of life. But it seems that the references I read today challenge us to start with excellence, so there is no comparison even in the doing of mathematics. It's not that mathematics, I compare and so on, and then I learn about relationship and not comparing. But even in the doing of mathematics, am I doing mathematics in order to, from a sense of ambition, in order to get the right answer before the other student? And in this regard, I think there is a deep-seated set of assumptions about knowledge and the place of knowledge as well. I think we very quickly say knowledge has its place, right? Because we've also, some of us have read Krishnamurti's teachings. And I'd like to examine where that statement comes from, that knowledge has its place. Does it come from knowledge? That knowledge, academic excellence has its place, knowledge has its place, or from in learning, we discover the place of knowledge. So this is the question I'd like to, I'll give you one humorous example. If I can remember it correctly, it's a poet, Ogden Nash. And the poet says, I give you now Professor Twist, a conscientious scientist. Trustees exclaimed, he never bungles, and sent him off to distant jungles. One day while camping on a tropic riverside, Professor Twist exclaimed he missed his loving bride. The guides went out and told him later that she'd been eaten by an alligator. Professor Twist could not but smile. No, no, he said, you mean a crocodile. So you can see Professor Twist knows clearly the difference between crocodile and alligator. He's written many tests and got high marks for the difference between crocodile and alligator. But that piece of knowledge has no relevance, absolutely no place in the actual immediate circumstances that Professor Twist is not aware of. So the statement of knowledge finding its place, knowledge finds its place in attention, movement of learning, or I take for granted knowledge has its place coming from my having heard Krishnamurti, and that's not examined. So it comes, does knowledge find its place from knowledge or from paying attention to when it's relevant and not relevant? So I just like to raise that question as well. And a lot of schooling, I think, is that we take for granted that this knowledge has its place. 6 is even, that answer has no place. It's just automatic and mechanical. Whereas 6 is even in the movement of learning and understanding, which the child who said it's odd, already there is this process of learning in which the evenness or oddness of 6 is actually being understood. So just to share, I'll just read one excerpt about this place of knowledge because it's come up in a few responses. Now, and this is Krishnamurti, now freedom from all that is freedom from the known. It is the state of a mind which says, I do not know, and which is not looking for an answer. Such a mind is completely not seeking, not expecting, and it is only in this state that you can say, I understand. It is the only state in which the mind is free. And from that state, you can look at the things that are known, but not the other way around. From the known, you cannot possibly see the unknown. But once you have understood the state of mind that is free, which is the mind that says, I don't know, and remains unknowing, and is therefore innocent, from that state you can function. You can be a citizen, you can be married or what you will. Then what you do has relevance, significance in life. But we remain in the field of the known with all its conflicts, striving, disputes, agonies. And from that field, we try to find that which is unknown. Therefore, we are not really seeking freedom. What we want is the continuation, the extension of the same old thing, the known. I also wanted to respond to Prabhakar sir for your response. I spoke a little bit about knowledge, but I think this is also relevant. I'm not able to articulate quickly how it's relevant, but I think I feel it is relevant to what you raised as well.
Yes. Gopal, there is a question in the chat box from Sunsong. He says, should we be violent with children because the world is violent?
Yeah.
You want to say something on this, or we go to
No, I mean, Sunsong is here in the next room. We're married,
okay.
So I can continue the exploration with her. But if she has something to say, please, she can say something, because I'd like to know where that question comes from and what she's thinking. Sunsong, do you have something to add?
I'm just relating that to this notion that we must teach the child competition and comparison because it is inevitable. So violence also is inevitable, and abuse. And so should we be violent also with children? Because they'll be moving out into a world that is violent. It seems like a paradox that we can say yes to one and no to the other.
So if I can just rephrase it and raise it in this way. An absurd, unhealthy, insane society is a competitive, unhealthy, violent, absurd education, a preparation for an absurd, unhealthy, competitive society. And is it inevitable that we do that? So we say, okay, this is what we have to do. I'm sorry, the world is such a terrible place, but we have to educate you in a terrible way in order to prepare you for a terrible world. But I'd also like to unpack that in terms of not just student-teacher relationship, but also teaching and learning as it occurs for each one of us. So that it's not a separation that I'm the teacher and there's the student there, but the whole process of learning. Is it inevitable that we compare, we judge, we are violent in our attitude and our ambition in order for us to be prepared for a society of that nature?
Thank you, Gopal. Thank you. We have about 2-3 minutes, so we'll take brief questions from or comments from Harshad Bhai and Dinesh Waghmare. Harshad, please go ahead.
Yes. In Krishnamurti schools, the environment is very, very healthy. And it is true that when students complete their education and go to the college where the environment is completely different and they feel lost, they feel very depressed for at least 1 year in the college. But after that, they get used to the new environment. About the knowledge, yes, it is very, very important to have knowledge, because if you want to go to the market and want to buy fruits or vegetables, you need to know mathematics, otherwise you can get cheated. So all kinds of knowledge is necessary so that we can later on can become a scientist, do research, and for all that, this knowledge is very, very necessary. But what Krishnamurti is saying, that the self-knowledge is the highest knowledge, because a person who understands his own self, how fear, anger, jealousy comes, such a person will be able to use the knowledge, external knowledge, in a much better way, more creative way. But a person who is very good knowledge but have no inner knowledge will misuse that knowledge, and that is what is happening, that the knowledge is used for destructive purpose. So, okay, I have finished. Thank you.
Thank you, Harshad bhai. Thank you. Thank you. Dinesh ji, please be brief. Yes.
Hello. Are you able to listen to me, sir?
Yes,
yes,
yes.
Yes.
I would just like to ask, this life is full of fragments like comparison, evolution, greed, violence, and other such things. Can we totally eliminate them or avoid them, or otherwise we can attend them, understand them, and attend them properly? What do you have to say on this?
Yeah, I mean, I think if there is a sense in which we are thinking that we should be acting in a different way, I think that sets up more contradiction and complexity. My sense is that these processes are in operation from childhood in subtle, unexamined, deep-rooted ways. The conditioning, especially when it comes to teaching, learning, education, and so on, is activated, and it's so deeply there, it's not even seen. Like fish in water, we don't even see it, the surround. So can one attend to that and not take for granted that we have to respond in this manner to our own learning and to the learning of children? Is it possible, is it inevitable that we respond in this way? Does that kind of put a break or an interruption in this habitual reflex of response? And then is it possible not to respond in this way, to further complicate the learning with this process of judgment, evaluation, and so on? Is it possible for there to be a gap, or is it inevitable? So that's one. I just, again, just read a few excerpts. This is from, very briefly, I see, oh, it's time.
No, okay. No, you can take a few minutes, no problem. Please go ahead.
So this is Krishnamurti on teaching and learning. And I will pick up on a question that was raised earlier as well. For centuries, we've been spoon-fed by our teachers, by our authorities, by our books, our saints. We've lived on what we have been told. We are the result of all kinds of influences, and there is nothing new in us, nothing that we have discovered for ourselves, nothing original, nothing pristine, clear. This is from Freedom from the Known. And this is from On Education. Teacher says, you've said that in teaching and learning, the situation is one of intensity, where you do not say, I am teaching you something. Now, this constant wiping away of the marks of thought, has it something to do with the intensity of the teaching learning situation? Krishnamurti says, obviously. You see, I feel that teaching and learning are both the same. What is taking place here? I'm not teaching you. I'm not your teacher or authority. I'm merely exploring and conveying my exploration to you. You can take it or leave it. The position is the same with regard to students. And then one more, a process of learning. I think there is a process of learning which is not related to wanting to be taught. Being confused, most of us want to find someone who will help us not to be confused. And therefore, we are merely learning or acquiring knowledge in order to conform to a particular pattern. And it seems to me that all such forms of learning must invariably lead not only to further confusion, but also to deterioration of the mind. I think there is a different kind of learning, a learning which is an inquiry into ourselves and in which there is no teacher and no taught, neither the disciple nor the guru. When you begin to inquire into the operation of your own mind, when you observe your own thinking, your daily activities and feelings, you cannot be taught because there is no one to teach you. You cannot base your inquiry on any authority, on any assumption, on any previous knowledge. If you do, then you're merely conforming to the pattern of what you already know. And therefore, you're no longer learning about yourself. So I think those questions and challenges and observations Krishnamurti raises, I've given, by the way, that was from Collected Works, that excerpt that I shared with you. I think, as I mentioned at the beginning, they're a lifetime they warrant a lifetime of exploration. It was just some excerpts that might be starting points for looking further into these questions. And just about the place of knowledge, I'd like to come to this. I think we sort of take it for granted that knowledge has its place. We know what that place is, and academic excellence has its place, and school is more than that, or education is more than that. It's relationships, it's time with nature and so on. I am suggesting, inviting people to start not from that place of we know what academic excellence is, we know what the place of knowledge is, but rather to start with the question of, is it possible for there to be a learning without this constant measurement process? Is it possible for there to be a learning without constantly bringing up the past remembrance or the past conclusions and knowledge? And when that occurs, what is the place of knowledge in that? Not, I know what the place of knowledge is. I don't know what the place of knowledge, but in investigating and exploring, what is the place of knowledge? Because otherwise we are in Professor Twist's situation, right? We have a lot of knowledge and we think we know its place, but we don't know its place because we're not actually paying attention to what is happening within or around us. Not only within, but also around us. So just those questions I'd like to raise. I like all of you friends, I don't have answers after many years of teaching, learning, exploring Krishnamurti's teachings. I find I have more questions, and in fact, some of the things I take for granted, I have taken for granted, are now completely called into question. So with that spirit, I'd like to just end with that, with a few of those questions. Is it inevitable that learning is constantly measured, judged, evaluated? Or is it possible for there to be a learning where this process doesn't occur? And likewise, do I already know the place of knowledge? Or how does knowledge find its right place? So I'll just raise it. For the moment, I will leave it at those questions. I think we can play with them, change them, re-examine them. For the moment, I just raise those questions. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
May I say one thing?
Yes, please.
Yeah, there is a actual knowledge, science knowledge, and there is a psychological knowledge. They are two different things. So when Krishnaji says knowledge is an obstacle in seeing things clearly, he is saying that psychological knowledge, the ideas and images which I carry about you, that prevents me in looking at you very, very clearly. But he is not against the factual scientific knowledge, which we all need for our daily existence. Okay, I finished.
Thank you. Thank you, Gopal. I think you have raised some fundamental questions. I want to add that we shouldn't start with the basic principle that comparison is inevitable, because if we do that, then we don't explore what comparison is. I think every child is unique and it should be respected for what it is, rather than saying that, I want to make this child this way or that way. And Christy was very clear about learning. Learning is basically observation, listening, and which leads to action. It's not that accumulation that is happening in our schools or in any school for that matter. So thank you. Thanks a lot for raising some very pertinent questions, which all of us who are or have been associated with schools are struggling with. I hope it will lead to further discussions and some clarity in near future. Thanks a lot for coming to our program and spending your time with us. Thank you so very much. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. Thank you, Dubeyji.
The program of the next Sunday. Next Sunday program of Gita Vardhan.
Okay.
Next
Sunday we have Gita Vardhan from Rishi Valley. She is in charge of the study center, so she is going to talk to us about the stories she tells the small children and how she introduces Krishnamurti's teaching to them. So please join at 11 a.m. Indian Standard Time next Sunday. Thank you.
Thank you, Dubey.
Thank you. Good
Modak,
night.
please end it. Modak, please end it. It is already 8.